Okay. Good afternoon, dear students. Thank you very much for having joined me today. It's a pleasure to continue with our classes. Well, yesterday we discussed a very important topic. We actually started right with our discussion of the speaking section. And as I told you yesterday, my plan for you today is to finalize with the theoretical aspect of the first task of the speaking section. And then we're going to have a lot of freedom in order to use our remaining classes to continue with this section, but practicing merely. Well, as I say, practicing is going to be the objective for today's class as well. Of course, if we finalize the theoretical part, we're going to move on and we're going to practice. But as I mentioned, anyways, we're going to have a very, very long time to do that tomorrow and also after tomorrow, right? On our last class on Friday. But well, fantastic. Let us start with our class, okay? We are already live, by the way, as you can see. And well, if you want to come back later on in the future to, well, of course, finalize or maybe to check out some detail or some particular point that you missed in the class, you can do it, right? As I told you, you can access the YouTube channel that is in the description of your WhatsApp group. And if you go there and if you find out that link in YouTube channel, all the videos, as I say, for our classes are uploaded there and are also streamed as we are doing right now. Okay, fantastic. So just in case you want to, of course, as I say, rewatch any of our classes in the future. Well, having said that, let us start with our presentation today. I have everything already prepared here, and let us start, okay? Very good. Well, let's go. So yeah, as I told you, yesterday we finalized with all the general aspects, and now it's time for us to specifically discuss the first task of the speaking section. Now, let us remember that yesterday I told you, right, that in the speaking section, we find 4 different tasks. And although we have, numerically speaking, 4 different tasks, we merely have 2 types of questions. And I told you that the first question you receive is always going to be of the first type of question as well, that is independent type of question. And of course, that means and that implies that the first task in our speaking section will always, as I say, be an independent question, because as I told you, the first question we receive is always an independent question. The second, the third, and the fourth one are all of them integrated questions, as we're going to be, of course, discussing in the following weeks. But for now, it's sufficient for us to, as I say, discuss this part, that is the first question in the speaking section called independent question, as I told you. Okay, so in this first task, you will be required to say your opinion on a general topic, and you will have to defend and sustain it. You will have little time to finish the task, which breaks down to the following: a preparation of 15 seconds and a response of 45 seconds. You remember that yesterday we actually saw, right, the simulator for this part, and I show you, right, that the question is basically that you receive a statement from ETS, and that statement is always going to be a very controversial topic. It's going to be something that people mostly disagree about. Something like, I don't know, what are the best pets, right? Dogs or cats? Or for example, what is the best season of the year, summer or winter, right? Statements are always like that. And of course, these statements are like this on purpose, because what ETS wants is to provoke discussion here. Because imagine, as I told you yesterday as well, many people in your room, when you are taking this as the IVT version, for example, many test takers who are taking the exam in your same room are going to disagree with a statement, but you are actually going to agree with it. And they're going to have contradictory positions to yours. So what this question is trying to do, as I say, is to provoke that type of discussion. And that is very good, because remember that we are taking this exam in order to measure our capacity to speak English in academic and non-academic settings and environments. And you know, of course, that when you are trying to use this exam as well, proficiency demonstration for you to apply to American or European universities, something that universities look for very much in applicants and people who want to belong and pertain to their institution, is people who are able to defend what they think and to provoke discussion, right? of course, healthy discussion. So that's the reason I think that, let's say, sustains this question. That's the reason why they have developed this type of question. Well, as I mentioned, the statement is always going to be controversial. And now, let me show you an example. I think that through the example, you're going to understand way better. Let me show you here. I have it prepared. All right. So let us see this example right here. Okay. As I told you, the only thing you're going to do before responding is reading a very short statement, as I showed you yesterday as well on the simulator. And in this case, for example, look at this statement. It says, some people believe that raising children is the most beneficial thing a person can do for society. Others are of the opinion that a person's career is their most important task in life. Which opinion do you find more persuasive? As you can see here, this is, again, another controversial and very much open question because people agree and disagree about this very much. And here the thing is, as you can see, that they are asking, do you believe that the most important contribution a person can do for society is having children or his or her career? Which one do you believe? And as you can see, of course, and as you know, this is something that not all people agree about. People think that having children is the most important thing you have to do for your family and for your society. And other people believe that it is actually better to concentrate in your studies and to have, I don't know, a fantastic career, helping people, things of that sort. Now, as you can see here, those are the two options they are giving you, because look at the question. The question is structured in a manner that you have to go and respond which of these two possibilities you find more persuasive. The one that, as I say, at the beginning says raising children is the most important contribution you can make to society, or on the other hand, your career and your studies are the most important contributions you can make to society. Which of those you find more persuasive? As you can see, although the question is open, they are actually giving you two options, right? You go for this or you go for this one. They are very absolute in this sense that they are saying you go for right or you go for left, right? In the sense that two options are here presented to you. And that is to say, this question is binary, right? That is to say, you have to choose from two different perspectives. And that is very important because here, students, I'm going to show you right now an example of a response that I offered for this question. And you're going to notice that what I always do in my responses and what I want you to imitate is that I always go for one of the reasons they give me here, because there are other people, dear students, I have seen and I have known many test takers who do this, and they don't actually want to respond to the question by choosing one of the possibilities they offer them. What they do instead is they try to create, I don't know, a middle ground response in which they simply summarize advantages and disadvantages of both positions. In this case, raising children or your career as the most important contribution you can make for society, but they never actually say, I agree with this or I go for this one. They never say which of these options they identify with. They never say what position they have on this issue. As I say, in their responses, they try to limit themselves to merely summarize this idea or to make a review of these positions, but they never actually say which of those positions they agree with. And I think that that is a wrong approach. You shouldn't do that, because think about it for a while. Why do you think that ETS is giving you these two options, right? They normally narrow their responses. It's very rare, very unlikely that your response or your question, excuse me, in this case, is going to be a totally open question. Very rarely it happens, but it could also be the case, I admit, that I have seen some examples or some questions in the exam that are, for example, what is the best season of the year? And in that case, of course, they are not restricting your responses, right? Because if you notice in this type of question, in the one that we have ahead us right now, this type of question is limiting your responses because it tells you to go for having children as the most important contribution or your career. So which of those, right? They are limiting your responses to two different options. But sometimes as well, I recognize you're going to receive very open questions. Something like, what is the best season of the year? Or what did you do for your vacation last time? Something like that. And in those type of questions, as I say, you can go about and respond about whatever you want. But normally 90% of the time you receive this type of question for the first task of the speaking section. And this type of question, as you can see, limits your response, limits the range of your responses. So when you find out this, dear students, my recommendation would be try to always go for one of these positions. Do not try to avoid taking a position or a side. In this case, choose a side, go for a side and defend it. Because as I told you, what is important here, dear students, apart from this, is understanding that, yeah, I told you yesterday, right? You have to say what you think about this statement. You have to say if you believe that raising children is more important or your career is more important. But you also have to defend your position. And that's the reason why I pasted here the picture of this man. I'm not sure if you know him. He's a very famous political commentator nowadays. His name is Ben Shapiro. And the reason why I decided to post one of his pictures here is because he's very famous for being a, well, good debater, let's say, or a very well exercised debater. You know what is a debate, right? A debate is a platform in which two people go about discussing a topic, stating their opinions and defending and sustaining their opinions. That is the most important part of a debate, right? For example, it could be a debate about, I don't know, a debate about should young people be or I don't know, something more general, something like should abortion be legalized, something like that, right? And people go and debate and they say, well, I agree with this. People should be able to have legal and free abortions, and other people say, no, but they shouldn't actually. And they discuss, right, in these debates, and they offer a defense of their positions. The people who are saying that abortion should be legalized, they go and say, okay, abortion should be legalized because of these reasons, right? And they expose their arguments and their beliefs. And the other side also defends its position. They say, okay, but abortion shouldn't be legalized because of these reasons, right? And they offer and defend arguments, or as I say, offer arguments as defense for their positions. And that is what you have to do as well here in your response. And that's the reason, as I say, why I posted the picture of this man here. So please always, when you are about to respond the first task of the speaking section, I want you to remember and I want you to identify this task with a debate. Imagine that when you are going to respond the first question of the speaking section, you are going to be debating, because you're going to state your opinion, but you're also going to defend it. You're going to offer arguments and reasons to demonstrate that your position is correct, right? Because that's what you do when you are debating. You go there in order to demonstrate that your position is right, your position is true, and your opponent's position is wrong, it's false, right? So in this case, of course, you don't have to make any reference to the contrary position, no. But in this case, center your attention to defending your own position. If you defend your position, if you defend your opinion, that's it, fantastic, as I say. Okay, so please identify this task with a debate. Whenever you're going to respond to this question, you are debating. You're going to state your opinion, and you're also going to defend it, all right? Fantastic. So let me show you an example. I think that, as I told you, through examples and illustrations, we always understand better. So let us read the question one more time. Some people believe that raising children is the most beneficial thing a person can do for society. Others are of the opinion that a person's career is their most important task in life. Which opinion do you find more persuasive? Okay, so now, as I told you, after you read this question, you have 15 seconds in order to prepare a response, in order to think about your position, in order to think about your arguments for defending that position, etc., etc. And afterwards, you have 45 seconds to respond. So let me show you a response that I offered for this question, and you're going to listen to how I respond, and I want you to try to identify, okay? I want you to try to identify how am I responding to this question before I show you the actual template and the structure that I have it here, don't worry. And I'm going to be sharing that with you. But I want to somehow give you the opportunity in this case for you to identify how am I responding to this question by yourself. Try to notice what type of sentences or introductory sentences I'm including. Try to notice how am I organizing and structuring my response. What type of arguments do I give? Do I give illustrations for my arguments? Try to catch all those details, okay? So please, imagine that my 15 seconds have already finalized. I already prepared my response, fantastic. So it's now time for me to respond to the question. And I'm going to have 45 seconds to do it, okay? So please, listen to my response to this question. And as I say, try to identify my structure, try to identify the way I'm responding, okay? Let's go.
Okay, with regard to the topic, I believe that a person's career is the most important task in life. I believe this way because of the following reasons. First of all, children are not necessarily a positive addition to the world. Maybe they turn out to be criminals. For example, I had an uncle who had a child that got into drugs and began stealing things. Secondly, if you're really good at your profession, you can come off with a revolutionary idea to positively affect people's life. As I want, for example, to be able to enact a law to allow people to create enterprises with very low taxes to improve their quality of life.
Very good. And as you can see, I used 45 seconds, right? This extra seconds is just a matter of the reproduction system. But yeah, if you notice then, my response that I delivered in 45 seconds is basically, as I told you, first of all, is the statement of my opinion. Expressing what is my particular position with regard to this topic. And if you notice, in this case, I defended this position, right? That a person's career is the most important task in life. That is to say, is the greatest contribution you can make to society, right? And after I offered my opinion, if you noticed, what I did was to defend my position. How did I defend it? Well, the first thing I did was to offer arguments, right? I said, firstly, because of this reason. Did you notice what was my first argument? My first argument was, right? Children are not necessarily a positive addition to the world. That was the first argument for me to defend my position that is actually your career, what is the most important task in life, the greatest contribution you can make to society. And by the way, dear students, you don't always have to state the opinion you actually have in the real world, because remember, this is a personal question, yes, but nonetheless, there is no way the reviewer actually knows what is your personal opinion on this topic, right? So sometimes the only thing you have to do is to go for the option that you consider it would be more easily defendable. Because as I say, you have to state your opinion, but you also have to defend it. You have to offer some arguments and reasons. Why is that position right and correct? And as I say, sometimes we have positions, we hold positions that although we have them personally in our lives, we don't know how to defend them, or sometimes we believe that it's very difficult to defend them. Therefore, sometimes there are other positions, even contradictory positions to ours, that are easier to defend. So as I say, don't restrict yourself, don't limit yourself to actually say what you really think. You can go for the option whenever you have this type of question that suits you the best. That is to say, that you consider it will be more easily defendable. It will be easier to offer arguments, illustrations for sustaining it, okay? So please think about that. Now, as I say, in this case, I'm defending the position that a person's career is the most important task in life, the most important contribution you can make to society, right? And I'm saying that the first reason I believe that is the case is because having children is not necessarily a positive addition to the world. And if you notice, that is my argument. That is my argument. I'm not being very extensive in my argument. I'm not being very much extensive. I'm not being very much long in my argument. I'm stating a very short sentence as my argument. And what did I do next? The next thing that I did immediately was to offer an illustration for my argument. If you noticed, that illustration simply tried to exemplify what I meant. It was a device, a technique that I used for my reviewer, the person who's going to listen to this response, for him to understand my point. What is it that I'm trying to say? Is, for example, it's exactly what I'm doing right now with you. I was talking to you before I showed you this example, right? I was talking to you about the first task of the speaking section. And what did I do in order for you to understand me better? I show you this illustration, right? For you to have an exemplified version of what I was saying. And that is exactly what I did in my response here. I offer my argument. Having children is not necessarily, children are not necessarily a positive addition to the world. And then I offered an illustration for my reviewer to understand what is my point, to understand that better. And what is the illustration I offered? I offered the illustration that I said, right? I have an uncle who had a child who got into drugs and began stealing things. So why am I offering this illustration? That I have an uncle who had a child who got into drugs and began stealing things. What do you think is the reason behind this illustration? Obviously, I'm trying to demonstrate that not all children are necessarily good people. Not because you have a child and trying to argue, right? That person is going to be a positive addition to the world, right? So as you can see here, what I'm doing is to offer a very personal illustration. I'm saying that I have an uncle, right, who had a child, etc., etc. Now, by the way, maybe you are wondering, is this something actually true in my life? No, I don't have an uncle who had a child who got into drugs. But as I say, it's not necessary here to always reflect the reality. And listen to this. My justification for this is that this exam, dear students, is not about you. This exam is about how well you speak English. They are not actually testing if you are a very intelligent person or if you are a very, I don't know, if you're a very moral person with fantastic values, etc., etc. Don't worry about that. Here, the only thing they are caring about is how well you speak English. So use any type of means you find, any type of technique you find in order to demonstrate how good English you have. It's not necessary to always reflect the exact reality of your life or the exact reality of the outside world, okay? So please have that in mind. This exam is not about that. This exam is, as I say, it's not an exam about honesty. It's an exam about your level of English, and use any means you have in order to demonstrate how good you are at speaking English, okay? Very good. So let us continue. As I say, I don't have an uncle who had a child who got into drugs, not at all. But what I did was to offer this illustration because I knew that it exemplified my point. And I know that this is an example that although it's not true in my own life, it is true of many people. Imagine how many people have suffered this situation, right? Having children who are or who turn out to be criminals and stuff like that. Well, sad. But the point is that this exemplifies the point that I offered, that children are not necessarily a good addition to the world. Now, after I offered that illustration, that if you notice, I took more time in my illustration than in my argument. My argument was actually shorter than my illustration. After I finalized my illustration for my first argument, I move on to a second argument, right? And what was my second argument? I said in this case, secondly, I believe that when you are very good at your profession, you can come up with a revolutionary idea to affect people's life. And after I gave my argument, right, that if you are very good at what you do, you can come up with a very good idea to affect people's life very positively, I gave an illustration. And in this case, I did offer one illustration of my actual life. I said, right, in the future, because I'm studying laws, right, as I told you, about to graduate from laws, I told you, right? Yeah, certainly. As a lawyer in the future, in my illustration, I said, right, I want to be able to enact a law in order to help people create enterprises and businesses without paying taxes in order to improve their quality of life. As I told you, that's how I'm demonstrating that if you are very good at your profession, excuse me, you can come up with a revolutionary idea to help people's life and development. And how am I demonstrating that this is actually true? How am I helping my reviewer to understand my point, to understand my argument? I'm offering my illustration. What illustration? A very personal and specific illustration. And saying, in the future, I want to enact a law in order to help people create businesses and enterprises without actually paying taxes in order to improve their quality of life. Awesome. That's what I'm trying to offer as an illustration, right? And after that, if you noticed, my time was over because you don't have actually a very long time, as I told you, just 4 or 5 seconds. That was my response. Very easy, right? It's a very, very repetitive structure. And you're going to notice that all my responses are like that. Now, let us go to a second example. Let us read this new question. It says, some people think that, I'm going to highlight here. So some people think that the criminal justice system should exist to punish wrongdoing, whereas others believe it should be used to prevent people from reoffending after their sentence is over. Which opinion do you find more persuasive? Okay, that is my new question. Well, as you can see, this is a little bit more challenging than the first question, and that is normal. You have to know that these questions, dear students, can vary. Some of them are very trivial. They ask you about your vacations, as it happened to me. But likely as well, you're going to find questions like these ones that are, of course, requiring you to have a very much, thoughtful period before going on to respond. And well, you have to be prepared for responding any type of question you come across in your path, okay? So as I say, this type of question is also possible or plausible for you to receive. So you have to be prepared for responding very trivial questions about vacations and animals or stuff like that. And also responding questions that, as I say, demand a thinking process. Anyways, you have to be prepared to come up with rapid responses in 15 seconds, as you know. And well, how can you do that? By practicing, of course. Well, let us listen to my response on this question, okay? Now, here I have it. Let's listen, and you're going to notice that my structure is the same. I offer my opinion, first argument, and an illustration for that argument. A second argument and an illustration for that second argument. Notice.
Okay, with regard to the topic, I believe that justice systems should exist to punish wrongdoings. I believe this way because of the following reasons. First of all, because it is fairer to punish people with retributive justice, that is, to punish what they have done. For example, I saw yesterday a man who had raped a poor girl. He must be punished because he committed such atrocity and not otherwise. Secondly, because if you punish people very severely for what they did, you disencourage them to do it again. For example, I know of a politician that did not embezzle again of his authority after he got in jail.
Fantastic, there you are. And if you noticed, actually in this case, I didn't use my entire 45 seconds, okay? I used, I think, 34 or 33, 43 or 42, which is actually very good as well, okay? Fantastic. So if you noticed and if you listened very carefully to my response, was I using the same template, the same structure? Yes, totally. I was using the exact same structure. I offered my opinion in this case that it would be better to punish people for what they have done, retributive justice, and not for any other reason, right? And then I offered my first argument, illustration for that argument, second argument, and illustration for the second argument. And why? Well, because, dear students, here I have, of course, my first gift of tonight's class for you, the structure I was following, and of course, I want to share with you. This is a structure you should use in all your responses. And this is totally fine, dear students, that you use this same structure in all your responses. Because remember, although you're going to practice hundreds of these questions before you take the exam, right? Because you want to have a very good practice before you actually take the exam. On the exam, you merely have to respond to one question. Just one question for this. I mean, this first task is just one question. You're not going to receive 2 or 3 questions of the same kind. No, just one question. One independent question, and that's it. And then you move on to the second type of question. In the second question, that is, as I told you, an integrated question. But on your exam, you merely receive one independent question. Therefore, if you practice and practice and practice this structure, when you come to the day of the exam, you're going to have it very clear on mind. You have to try to memorize this structure, by the way. And on your response, you're not going to be losing your time by, for example, I don't know, thinking about how you're going to organize your response. That I have seen many people who actually do that. They go to the exam without preparing anything, and they think on that same second, how are they going to organize their responses? And that is, of course, something tremendously disadvantageous for them. Now, if you practice and practice and you know how to organize this response before you go and take the exam, fantastic, because when you go to the exam, the only thing you're going to care about is the topic. You read the topic and you say, okay, with this topic, I'm going to use this structure, that is this one, right? And you respond. So how is this template or structure organized? Look at it. It consists in very simple 4 steps. What is the first step? This first step, if you noticed, is an introductory phrase. Every single time I responded, when you listen to me, right, I always started my responses by this introductory phrase with regard to the topic, right? And I started to state my opinion right after I finalized with this sentence. And as I say, you can actually always take this sentence as well. Always start your responses with this sentence, because when you know that sometimes the first words we say are always difficult, right? We always struggle with the first words we say. So in order for you to avoid such a problem of thinking, how am I going to start my response? Have it on mind already recited, already determined, already decided, as I say, how you're going to start your response. In this case, with regard to the topic. And after you mention this phrase, you go with your opinion, right? With regard to the topic, and depending on the topic you receive, you state your opinion. With regard to the topic, I believe that people should be punished because of what they do. With regard to the topic, I believe that your career is the most important contribution to your society, right? Very easy. Afterwards, this is the first part, the first step, you go about mentioning a transition phrase. If you noticed, I always mentioned this phrase or sentence in my responses as well. I always said, after I stated my opinion, I think this way because of the following reasons, or this is my opinion because of the following reasons. I think this is a very important part in the response to your students because it warns the reviewer, the person who is listening to you, that you have finalized with your opinion, you have finalized with your, let's say with your position, you have finalized with that. And now you're going to start with your defense of that position. You're going to start defending, supporting your own position, right? And I think that this certainly, well, in this case, renders a lot of organization and clearness to the response because the reviewer knows in what part of the structure you find yourself right now. You are about to enter the body, the most important part of the response, right? You can think about the first step as you have it here with regard to the topic as the introduction to the response if you want. And the rest is the body, the most important part, right? So this sentence here in the middle is, as I say, warning the reviewer that you are about to enter the body of your response because you have already finalized with the introduction, okay? Fantastic. So afterwards, after you've mentioned this phrase, first argument, okay? Well, notice that my arguments are always very short sentences to your students. We're going to practice very soon, and you're going to notice that a very common mistake is that test takers normally try to offer very long arguments. And that is fine. I mean, that is fine in our normal life situations. But remember that you merely have 4 or 5 seconds in order to offer your response. Therefore, your arguments should be just one sentence, super short, as I did, right? For example, my first argument in the first question was because children are not necessarily a positive addition to the world. That was my argument. And then I moved to the illustration. So as you can see, arguments, please. You can come up with any argument, by the way. Bad arguments do not exist, okay? In this case, of course, as far as it somehow benefits your position, as far as it goes in favor of your position, it's fine. It doesn't have to be a very clever argument, dear students. The way you express it, the illustration you offer is even more important than the quality of the argument. If the argument, as I say, goes in favor of your position, as minimum as you can think of, fantastic. If it minimally, as I say, goes in favor of your position, that's it. It's a good argument. And then you're going to defend your argument, or you're going to make it better. You're going to perfect your argument by your illustration. Is the illustration actually the most important part of this body? Because as I told you, when we are explaining something, as I did, right, and as I offer you this illustration before, when I was, for example, in the beginning of this class, and I started to talk about this task, right? What did I do? I started with the theoretical part, etc. And in order for you to understand my point, in order for you to have everything clear, I moved to what? I moved to the illustrations, right, that I show you, these ones. And that is exactly what you're doing here. You're offering your argument that is very short, and then you are coming to the illustration in order to offer a very satisfactory exemplification of your argument. You are making your argument understandable, clear, and powerful through your illustration. Therefore, dear students, your illustrations should be longer than your arguments. Your illustrations should receive more focus and emphasis by you. Focus on the illustrations. As I say, arguments are fine. As far as they help to your case, they are okay. Nonetheless, illustrations are very important because it is through the illustrations that you're going to go for your high score, the one that all of you have told me, right, you want to obtain. If you offer good illustrations, you're going to get those high scores because remember, this is a very personal question and you are trying to be as personal as possible. So as personal you make your response, that is going to be the score you're going to receive. As emotionally and personally compelling you make it, that is going to be the score you're going to receive, okay? So for that purpose, dear students, please always try to offer very personal and specific illustrations. If you noticed, all my illustrations were personal and specific. I talked about my life, or I talked about somebody who was very nearby me. For example, you remember that I talked to you about my uncle, right? although it wasn't true, right, that I was talking about my uncle, my actual uncle didn't have that problem. I was talking about somebody who is very nearby me, who is of my proximate environment and sphere. And that is important because, as I say, this is a very personal type of question. Therefore, dear students, my recommendation for you is try to make your illustrations very personal too, and to make them specific. If you notice, for example, what I did in all my illustrations was to offer very specific cases. For example, when I was giving my illustration for my second point in the first question, I said, right, in the future, I want to be able to enact a law. And maybe I could have offered that illustration. In the future, I want to enact a law, and that was it. But I didn't do that. I offer a more specific and a specified illustration. I talked about what my law would be about. I talked about that, or I talked about my law on taxes, because I said I want to create a law that is going to be able to create, or well, to allow people create businesses and enterprises without paying taxes. So as you can see, I'm being very specific in my illustration. And trust me, if you make a very personal illustration and you make it very specific, that is the formula. Write that down if you want. That is the formula for having fantastic illustrations, when you make them personal and when you make them specific, okay? So I want to listen very personal and specific illustrations from you, okay? After you finalize with your first illustration for the first argument, you move on to the second argument and to the second illustration. No more than that. As you can see here, second argument and second illustration. Remember, very short second argument, and in your illustration, you can emphasize a little bit more and to spend more time in there if you want, okay? So this is the structure, okay? Is there any question, dear students, with regard to the structure we have discussed, with regard to the first task of the speaking section? Please tell me. Selena, Elsa, Claudia, Romanev, questions with regard to the first task?
Good afternoon, teacher. I
Yes,
would
Elsa?
like to have an example or a difference between a reason and an illustration.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, your reason or your argument, as you said, so you can use those terms interchangeably. A reason and argument is basically a motive, un motivo, una razón, why you are thinking the way you think. For example, if I tell you that I think, right, that I don't know, if I tell you that I think the word is plane instead of rounded, right, as we all know, if I tell you that the word is plane, you will be asking me for reasons, arguments, and I will tell you, but how do you know that those videos that NASA has posted on the internet are true? That will be my argument, right? And then if I offer you an illustration, I will tell you, all right, look at this particular video. This was recorded last week, and here, although it looks as this word is rounded, as you can see here, they have made some tricks with edition videos, and that is the way they are manipulating the word, something like that, right? Or for example, if I tell you, I don't know, if the question is about, let's say, if the question is about the season of the year, if I believe that summer is better than winter, and if I tell you, yeah, I believe that summer is better than winter, and you tell me why, and I could respond, my first reason is because in summer you can wear more comfortable clothes and to have time with your friends. And then I could offer you an illustration. Last week, because it's summer, I went to another country with my friends, and I had the opportunity to use fantastic shorts and t-shirts I bought in in the market the other day, right? That could be the illustration. So as I say, the illustration is basically an example you give of your own life or any other very nearby person to you or that demonstrates that your argument applies to your life, and that of course demonstrates the validity and the truthfulness of your response. Is that clear, dear Elsa?
Yes, I understood that an illustration is something like a specific example.
Exactly,
Or
yes.
it could be more like my examples.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes,
Reasons is
exactly.
something like more general. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes, you're right. Thank you very much, Elsa. Yes, you're right.
Okay.
Very good. My pleasure. Great. Well, fantastic. So, do we have any other question? Guys, Selena, Claudia, Elsa, other questions with regard to this part?
Yes.
Yes,
Should
Claudia,
we
tell me.
take shall we take notes in this part, for example, of our ideas?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yes, certainly. Actually, for example, let me show you this. Look at this, for example. This is a blank sheet of paper, right? As I told you, when you're going to take the IBT version, you have the opportunity to write down your notes on paper, as we have discussed, right? And all that paper and pencils, the test center provides them to you. Now, when you receive that in your test room, of course, all those papers are in blank. So my recommendation would be, when you receive your papers, write down the structure you're going to use. For example, this is a blank sheet of paper, and as you can see here, I have written some things. And this is the structure for the next type of question we're going to see next week. But imagine here that this is a blank sheet of paper, and the first thing you should actually do is to write down the structure that I just showed you. In this case, is this one, right? With regard to the topic, because of the following reasons, first argument, illustration, etc. For you to do what? For you to, dear students, to simply fill those spaces with your ideas, as you said, dear Claudia. When you have your structure already written on your paper, the only thing that, of course, is lacking is to offer your actual arguments, right? For the topic you receive. So yeah, you are able to write down on paper what are going to be your arguments, and you should actually do it, definitely. Take up the piece of paper they offer you, or if you're going to take the home IBT version, if you're going to take that version, of course, you take your whiteboard, right, as I told you, and you write down there your structure. And when you receive the topic, the only thing you do is to complement your structure with your actual responses for that particular question, right? But yeah, you should definitely take notes, and but in this sense, right, not taking notes as I don't know, from any other material, because the only thing you are receiving from ETS is this statement, right? So the statement is not necessary for you to write it again or something, but the only thing you should write down is your arguments, your illustrations, or something very short for you to remember it later, right? Of course, you don't have to write it extensively or to write everything, because you merely have 15 seconds, but you can write down something to remember you of what you're going to respond, right? And by the way, your notes are never punctuated. Therefore, you shouldn't worry about your letter, if it is, I don't know, if it is stray, if it is ugly, if it is beautiful, if it is well organized. That shouldn't be a concern, because as I say, notes are not evaluated. Nobody looks at your notes, excuse me. Therefore, if you can make them understandable and organized to you, that's all. Yeah, is that fine, dear Claudia?
Yes, thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Great. Any other question, or we can move on a little bit? Okay. Let me just stop here my camera. Second, I want to connect my computer to my charger, just in case it doesn't. Okay, remain with battery. There we are. Great. Well, we can continue then. So what's next? Well, as you know, to practice, because there's anything else to say. So let me please right now offer you some questions, and you're going to respond for me. Okay. So let's go. I think that this is what you were all waiting for. Okay, so let me show you here. I'm going to open my chronometer first of all. Here I have my timer. And this is how I'm going to take your time, right? As you can see here, I have 15 seconds and 45 seconds, right? And now I'm going to open as well. Oh, sorry, not this part. I'm going to open as well. Oh, sorry. I'm going to open as well my simulator for us to see the questions for our practices, okay? So here I have it. I'm going to open it. Good. Great. So all of you are going to respond. So please try to enable your microphones. I mean, not right now, but try to have everything ready for enabling your microphones. And as Claudia here reminded us about, have paper or something to write down with in order for you to write the structure. And of course, think about your arguments and write down something in order for you to remember, right? What you're going to say in your responses. Yeah, so here we have it. So speaking tasks, yes, answer and answering, quiz mode here. Awesome. Well, let's go. Let's practice. So here we are. So what can I tell you about this this part? As you can see, as I told you yesterday as well, here you have the instructions. You don't need to read this because we already know what to do. That's the reason why you're taking these courses, so don't worry about that. And here you have the question. So let's read it, okay? It says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Why or why not? Use details and examples to support your answer. And here we have the question. It says, for learning job skills, workplace training is better than a university education. Well, that's it. And here you have, as I told you, 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to deliver it, okay? So we're going to start with the practice. Well, awesome. So I'm going to paste this to the chat box, by the way, for you to read it more comfortably. There you have it. It says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Why or why not? Use details and examples to support your answer. And this is the statement. For learning job skills, workplace training is better than a university education. Okay, awesome. So please, both of you, dear students, take your piece of paper, grab your pencil, and I'm going to give you your 15 seconds in order to prepare your responses. All right. So please, all of you can start preparing your responses now. There you are. Okay. So I think that there is somebody who just got into. We are about to practice, dear students, the first task of the speaking section. As you can see here, we have the first question. I'm going to paste it once again to the chat box, okay, for you to read it more comfortably there. And it's about for learning job skills, workplace training is better than a university education, okay? So please prepare your response. Your classmates here already had their 15 seconds. So who would like to start with this response? You're going to have your 45 seconds here. And by the way, as you can see, this has this green bar. And when I press the button start, it starts to get empty, right? So when the bar is totally empty, then you know that your time is completely over, right? And you can, of course, stop at that point because on the actual exam, when you exceed your 45 seconds, your response is not actually recorded. Therefore, it will be totally useless to continue responding when your time is over, right? Fantastic. So, well, in this case, please, dear Elsa, could you help me with the response for this question?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So, please,
I can
yeah,
start.
tell me. No, yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna tell you when. You can start responding to the question now.
I don't, because I think in university the education is more systematic and we receive a complete education. Because in workplace, people can learn about job skills, but something like empirical in way. But in university, it's more systematic. For example, I can learn how to be a teacher, but very systematic, organized, and methodological way, and I can improvise in job place directly without university. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was very good. Thank you. I'm going to offer you some feedback later. Okay. So let's continue with Claudia. Claudia, could you please turn on your microphone and please
Yes.
start responding. Yes, thank you very much. So please start responding to the question now.
Yes, I think that workplace training is better than a university education because of university can give you theoretical education, but you never have a full education before you are in the workplace. For example, I study history and I don't know how to work in museums before I get there. So other reason is that in the workplace, you can learn about the times of the company and how is your job in the real life. How is the course or subject, like in museums. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Fantastic. Thank you very much, dear Claudia. And well, there is another student that in its profile says iPhone. I'm not sure who it is, but would you like to respond, dear student, to the question? Did you have time to prepare your response? Yeah, I think that yeah, Romaneth. Okay, Romaneth, you're there. Would you like to respond, dear Romaneth, to the question? Or maybe in the next round, because we're going to practice one more. Next round? Okay, next round. Very good, thank you. All right, so fantastic. So, well, let me offer some feedback then for Elsa and for Claudia, who offered, of course, their responses. So, for example, with regard to Elsa, I think that it was a very good response, you know, and here, the first thing that I could say, and of course that it is a recommendation, we'll be trying to offer this introductory phrase that we discussed right here, okay? In the template, of course, you do not have the obligation to use this specific wording. You can change it, but to offer an introductory phrase makes it more understandable, because in this case, for example, you said when you started your response, you said, I don't. And yeah, I mean, you were responding to the question if you agree with that. But it's better to offer this introductory phrase and to state your opinion by saying, with regard to the topic, I believe this, right? Instead of saying yes or no immediately, because those are very direct responses, and sometimes they feel, I don't know, weird when you portray them like that. But nonetheless, when you offer this introductory phrase, or you say, for example, in my opinion, I believe that this and this and that, it sounds more, as I say, more professional. So I would recommend you to offer that, an introductory phrase with regard to the topic. Or it could be, for example, I had a student who said, I came to the realization that, and he started his response. I always remember his example. But yeah, you can use any introductory phrase like that. What else? For example, here, your argument in this case, because you offer one argument, right? It was that in the university, knowledge is taught more systematically. Fantastic. It is a very good argument. So as you can see, that could be the argument, right? In the university, knowledge is taught more systematically. Now, if you noticed, when you said this argument, you used a lot of words. You extended this argument a lot. You explained it and re-explained it. So the idea would be trying to make it very short. And as I say, the argument is very clear when you merely say the university knowledge you get is more systematic or something like that, right? That could have been your argument. A very short sentence. In the university, knowledge is taught more systematically, and that's it. And then you move on to the illustration directly without re-explaining. And it's totally fine. It's totally natural when you try to explain it again, because as I say, normally we try to, in order to make things clearer, we try to offer explanations, but the best manner to make our matters and topics clear is by offering illustrations. So you're going to use your illustration to make your arguments. In this case, the university knowledge is systematically taught by your illustration. It's your illustration what you're going to use as a means in order to clarify your argument, okay? But it was very good. So as I say, in your illustration later, try to offer a very personal illustration. For example, you have said something like, in the university, when I studied, I don't know, let's say that you are an engineer. When I studied computer, or I don't know, systems engineering, it happened to me that although I learned how to program, although I learned how to program, when I was in my actual work, I apply all that knowledge very systematically, right? Something like that, using a very personal and specific illustration. When I was in the university, I learned this, and I apply it very systematically at my job, right? But fantastic, very good, dear. I would say it's a very good response.
Okay. Thank you for your suggestion. It's very clear. I'm trying to put in practice those recommendations.
Okay. Thank you very much, Elsa. Fantastic. And well, finally, with regard to Claudia, it was a very good response as well. In this case, for example, she offered two arguments, right, and two illustrations. And the first argument she offered, it was that she believed when you are actually working, well, when you are studying in the university, you never receive complete education, right? Because you actually don't have that experience that merely work can give you. Very good. It was a very good argument. And she offered a short version of the argument. Maybe she could have, in this case, offer a shorter version even. But anyways, it was very good. And then she offered very personal and very specific illustration, right? She talked about her career. She said, although I studied history in the university, I never learned, for example, how to do my job in museums. Very good. It was awesome because she talked about her experience in museums and demonstrates that not everything is taught in a university, right? Very good. And then she moved on to a secondary, right? So yeah, we're gonna try to complement this a little bit more later in our next classes, because next classes are going to be merely about practice. Tomorrow, we are just going to practice. We are not going to discuss any theoretical aspects. It's just practice, 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 okay? So please, I beg you tomorrow, come with your microphone prepared, with your papers prepared, because we're going to practice a lot, okay? Very good. Well, we're going to stop here because of the time, but it has been a fantastic time, I think, with you. So please let me take your assistance before you go, right? And then we're going to be able to finalize, okay? Well, so please help me as well with the traditional poll, as I told you that I appreciate your responses very much, okay? So please look at your screen, help me with that. And let me please call out your names. Oh, and I have a gift for you, by the way. Let me share my screen again. I want to send to the WhatsApp group something for you that I was preparing this afternoon. I gathered some material for you, dear students, that I would like to share. And this is, here I am. I made a compilation of a lot of material, websites, YouTube channels that contain practices for the speaking section. So whenever you want to practice by yourself when we are not in class, use this document that I prepared for you, and you're gonna have a lot of free material, okay? So just send it to the WhatsApp group, just in case you want to have it, okay? Fantastic. So now it's time for your names. Please just listen. Okay. Thank you. And please help me with one more poll. It happens that on Wednesdays we have to fill 2 different polls. Okay, I'm so sorry for annoying you, but you know the company requires me to fill 2 polls. It's just that they are like that. Well, but just on Wednesdays, anyways. Who's here? Okay, here we have Elsa Maria.
Yes.
Thank you very much, dear Elsa. What about Claudia Hernandez?
Present.
Thank you very much, dear Claudia. What about here we are, Romaneth Leslie?
Present.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Romaneth. Fantastic. Well, those were, oh, because I think that somebody else was here, but she got out for some reason. Well, weird, who knows? Well, thank you very much, dear students, for your responses. Well, fantastic. So I'm going to be seeing you then next time in order for you to continue, all right, with the classes, and we're going to practice, okay? So please have your microphone ready for tomorrow's class, and I see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much. See you.